To another video on Map TheVote election predictions. So today I wanted to take a look at the 2026 governor elections and what we can expect. Now, obviously, these races are a long time away. It's June 2025, so we're over a year away. However, we can start to get a preliminary look as candidates begin to announce their campaigns. So I've already filled in some states which I think are pretty comfortably safe. I don't think they're going to be super interesting. Now, I do want to go over some of them really quickly, though, that I have filled in as safe. Now, in New York, in 2022, Kathy Hochul, she won by about 6-7 points. However, I do think it's going to be safe this time around, and I'm going to explain why. So, even though New York swung 10 points to the right from 2020 to 2024, Kamala Harris only won it by 13 points. I do expect this environment is going to be a lot more bluer, and Hochul seems to have rebounded a bit in terms of her popularity. Now, she is facing a primary challenge from her own Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado. However, since the Trump administration began, Hochul has made that her focal point in fighting the administration, and I think that's helped her. But regardless of who the Democrats nominate, I think they'll win New York by a safe margin. Now going on to some of these other states, we're going to go to Rhode Island now. And Rhode Island's actually interesting because in 2022, Democrat Dan McKee, he won by like 20 points, but ever since then, he has become really unpopular even among Democratic voters, and he's just not doing very well with his approval rating right now. And Rhode Island was one of those states that did tighten up in 2024. I think McKee probably still wins by a safe margin, but I think this could be one of those wild card races that gets closer than you might expect. Looking at Vermont, we've got Republican Governor Phil Scott. We don't know yet if he's going to run for another term, but assuming he does, I'll have this race as safe Republican. Now, New Hampshire in 2024, Kelly Ayotte won by about 9 points, even though Kamala Harris won the state by about 3 points. And I imagine Ayotte is probably going to win by even more this time around. She's going to have that incumbency advantage. And New Hampshire is likely going to elect Chris Pappas, a Democrat, to the U.S. Senate on the same ballot. But New Hampshire does have a history of splitting their ballot, and I think a lot of voters will continue to do that this time around. So I do think Kelly Ayotte wins, and I think she probably wins by more than 10 points. Now in Maine, you've got a lot of Democrats running for governor because Janet Mills, the Democrat, she is term limited, and a lot of the Democrats, they don't want to run for Senate because they're scared of losing to Susan Collins, the Republican senator, so they're all running for governor, including the daughter of Congresswoman Shelley Pingree. And I think whoever the Democrats run, they'll probably win by a safe margin. All the strong candidates seem to be vying for the nomination there. Now we're going to head out west to Oregon, where Democrat Tina Kotek is running for re-election. Now, Oregon's interesting because in Oregon, in 2022, she only won by a couple points, with an independent candidate actually splitting the vote, as you can see here. And Betsy Johnson was not a left-wing candidate. She was actually a right-wing candidate So without a split vote, there's a good chance the Republicans would have won this race. And even in 2018, a blue wave year, Democrats only won this by 7 points. So Oregon, the governor's race hasn't been super great for Democrats compared to federal races. So I'm going to have Oregon as likely blue for now. Now, looking to Nevada, you've got Republican Governor Joe Lombardo. He's running for re-election, and Lombardo barely defeated Democrat Steve Sisolak in 2022, who is actually the only incumbent Democratic governor to lose that year. And since then, Lombardo has become quite popular in Nevada, and there's a chance that their Democratic Attorney General Aaron Ford runs for this seat, but polling, although limited, it has shown that Lombardo is quite popular and he would win this race pretty easily. Now, until we can get more data, I don't want to put this yet as safe red, but for now, I think likely red is a pretty fair rating. Now, looking at Arizona, we've got Democrat Katie Hobbs. She is running for re-election. In 2022, she narrowly defeated Carrie Lake. And in that race, Carrie Lake barely lost by like less than a percentage point, I believe. Meanwhile, Blake Masters lost the Senate race by about 5 points. So relative to Masters, Carrie Lake is a stronger candidate, but relative to a generic Republican, I would say she's still a weaker candidate. Now, we don't know yet who the Republicans are going to run this time around in Arizona. And if we take a look here at the Wikipedia page, Andy Biggs has announced he's running. Karen Taylor Robeson, who ran in 2022, she's running as well. I think Robeson would be a stronger candidate than Biggs. However, Biggs does have Donald Trump's endorsement. So I think for now, Arizona is probably tilt Democrat. And of course, it swung heavily towards Trump in 2024. He won it by over 5 points, nearly a 6 point swing. But Hobbs does have that incumbency advantage. And I think combined with the environment, she's narrowly going to pull through in Arizona. Now, looking over at Alaska, I do think this is probably going to be a safe red race. However, there's a chance that former Democratic Congresswoman Mary Peltola runs for governor. And if she does, I think she would put up a pretty decent fight. However, this is a state that Trump won by 13 points, and we don't even know yet if Peltola is going to run. So for now, I'm going to put it as safe red. Now, in New Mexico, Michelle Lujan Grisham, she's the current incumbent Democratic governor, and as you can see, she is term limited. She has won by about 5-6 points in each of her races, and Kamala Harris won New Mexico by 6 in 2024 after Joe Biden won by about 11 in 2020. I do think New Mexico will have a bit of a rebound to the left in 2026. Whoever the Democrats nominate looks like it might be former Secretary of the Interior Deb Haaland. I think they can probably win by high single digits at least. For now, I'm going to put it as likely blue. And Hawaii should be safe blue. Sorry about that. Now in Kansas, Democratic Governor Laura Kelly, she is term limited. In 2018, she beat Chris Kobach. He was a pretty weak candidate for the Republicans. 2022, she barely won by 2 points. And she definitely benefited from the Roe v. Wade decision. And she is term limited this time around. I'm not really sure that the Democrats have a strong candidate to run here. And it is a pretty red state, voted for Trump by double digits. I'd imagine Republicans could win here pretty easily. For now, I'm going to put it as likely red, and it's probably going to move towards safe red unless, we have evidence that the Democrats can nominate a stronger candidate. Now, moving on to Texas, Governor Greg Abbott, he's running for an unprecedented fourth term. And looking back in 2022, he won by 11 points, 2018, 13 points. So a bit closer in 2022. And now we have a few potential candidates on the Democratic side. You've got Colin Allred, who ran for Senate in 2024, overperformed Kamala Harris by about 5 points. I think he's more likely to run for the U.S. Senate again rather than governor. But that leaves State Representative James Tallarico. I think he'd be a pretty formidable candidate for the Democrats if he were to run. And of course, Texas voted for Trump by about 14 points. There was a huge swing from 20 compared to 2020 when Trump won by about 5.5. So Texas definitely took a shift towards the Republicans last year. Now, if the Democrats were to nominate a candidate like James Tallarico, I think he could keep it in the high single digits. So with Abbott winning by 8 or 9 points. So for now, I'm going to have Texas as a likely R, but I could definitely see an argument for safe R. Now, looking over at Iowa, Governor Kim Reynolds, she is term limited, and we've got the state's only statewide Democratic elected official, Rob Sand. He's the Iowa State Auditor. He's running for governor in 2022. He barely won re-election by, I believe, a few thousand votes. So while he's likely not gonna win this race, he's by far the strongest candidate the Democrats have. He's probably gonna be running against Republican Congressman Randy Feenstra for the governor's race. Iowa did vote for Trump by 13 points. I think in a good year for the Democrats, in a good environment, this race with Rob Sand could probably be maybe an 8-point win for the Republicans. But again, we'll have to see how the environment shapes up. But for now, likely R. And then in Minnesota, Tim Walz is eligible for re-election. He is not term limited, and we don't know yet if he's going to run. I think he probably will run for re-election. He'd be the first governor to win 3 terms since Minnesota moved to 4-year gubernatorial terms. And Kamala Harris only won Minnesota by 3 points in 2024. However, this is a state that voted for Joe Biden by about 7.5 points. And in 2022, as you can see, Walz won by about 7.5. I think in a good environment, he probably wins by a likely margin, high single digits. Now, going on down to Georgia, Brian Kemp, the popular Republican governor, is term limited. If you actually take a look at the 2022 race here, we can see that Stacey Abrams, she lost by 8 points, or about 7.5, and after only losing by about 1.5 points in 2022. So obviously this is a huge opportunity for the Democrats, and the Republicans, they've got their Attorney General, Marjorie Taylor Greene could run, Brad Raffensperger could run. I think Raffensperger would be a strong candidate, although some MAGA voters may not be inclined to vote for him. In the primary, they've got their Lieutenant Governor, Burt Jones. Now, in the Democratic primary, the Democrats will need a strong candidate, someone like Senators Raphael Warnock or Jon Ossoff, in order to have a shot at winning this race. And I don't think that candidate should be Stacey Abrams. She's had her chance 2 times in a row, and I don't think it would be smart to run her again. I think Lucy McBath could be a strong candidate, or even Keisha Lance Bottoms, but especially Lucy McBath. And I think the Democrats have a real shot here with a good enough environment. And keep in mind, Trump only won Georgia by about 2 points. That was a 2-point shift to the right, even though the nation as a whole moved about 6 points to the right. So relative to the rest of the nation, Georgia actually moved 4 points to the left. So from 2020 to 2024, so Georgia's definitely getting bluer, I think, and with a good environment for Democrats, I think this is a very winnable race. Now, for now, I'm going to put it as lean Republican, but as we get closer to the midterms, this race could definitely be a lean blue race. Now, in Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro is running for re-election, and if you'll recall, in 2022, he beat State Senator Doug Mastriano by a whopping 15 points. Now, obviously, Mastriano was a pretty weak candidate. Shapiro is a strong candidate. He was elected as Attorney General in 2016 with Trump on the ballot. He won re-election in 2020. He's been floated as a presidential contender for 2028. And I think Shapiro is a pretty strong candidate. I think he's going to win re-election fairly easily. Republicans don't really seem to have any strong candidates so far running in this race. Potentially Stacey Garrity, I think, could be a decent candidate for them. But for now, I think with an incumbency advantage, with a bluer environment, I think Shapiro at least wins by a likely margin. Now, Ohio is pretty interesting because Vivek Ramaswamy is running and he's been endorsed by Trump. It looks likely he's going to win that primary. And the Democrats have a few options. Amy Acton is running for governor, but there's a very good chance that Sherrod Brown, the former U.S. Senator, runs, or former Congressman Tim Ryan runs. And Tim Ryan obviously put up a respectable performance against J.D. Vance in the 2022 Senate race. I think Ryan or Brown would be the strongest Democratic candidates. I think Ramaswamy is going to be a weak candidate, to be honest. I don't think many Republicans in Ohio are going to be very keen to vote for Vivek Ramaswamy, especially after the H-1B visa controversies and such. I think, and also Ohio did vote for Trump by 11, so Ramaswamy does have that going for him. But with a bluer year and Ramaswamy probably being a weaker candidate against a potentially stronger Democratic candidate, I think this race very possibly could be lean R. I think in a best case scenario for Democrats, they could win Ohio's governor's race, but the Republicans definitely have the advantage, at least for now. Now, in Michigan, Governor Gretchen Whitmer is term limited, and if we take a look here, Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan, he is running as an independent, and then in the Democratic primary, we have an interesting primary because both the Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist and the Democratic Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, they're both running for governor. So that's going to be an interesting primary to watch. I think Benson's slightly favored. In the Republican primary, you've got Congressman John James running. Obviously, he ran for Senate in 2018 and 2020. He came up short both times, but he's definitely a decent candidate. I think he could have a real shot at winning this race. However, again, it's going to be a bluer year. And looking back at 2022, Gretchen Whitmer did win by about 10 points. Same thing in 2018. And then down ballot, Michigan has been stronger for the Democrats. Even looking at 2024, Trump narrowly carried Michigan by about 1.5 points, but Democrat Alyssa Slotkin won the Senate race by about 0.3%. So down ballot, Michigan is a bit bluer. I think for now, Michigan is probably going to be lean blue, but I could see an argument for likely blue. Now that just leaves Wisconsin, and Democrat Tony Evers, he is not term limited, but if you look back at 2022, he won by around 3 points. 3.5 points, which was a solid performance because the Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate, Mandela Barnes, he lost by about a point. So Evers, he had that incumbency advantage, but also he's a decent candidate. And I think if he ran for re-election, he would be favored. He's been a fairly popular governor. He's famously used his line item veto powers in interesting ways. And looking at who the Republicans could run, and uh, they've got a few options. I don't I'm not particularly impressed by any of these guys. I mean, I think Tom Tiffany could be interesting. Um, but looking at the Democrats, if Evers doesn't run, you've got Sarah Godlewski. I think she could be good. Josh Kaw, I think she could be a good candidate, as well as Tom Nelson. I like him policy wise. And then Ben Wickler could, I think, be very solid. He did a great job as the party chair. So, and that's if Evers doesn't run. Evers would have that incumbency advantage, obviously. And Trump won he won Wisconsin by about 1%, which was around a 2-point shift to the right from 2020. Even though the nation as a whole swung right by about 6 points, so Wisconsin, relative to the nation, it actually got bluer. So I think Democrats have a really solid chance at retaining the governorship. I'm going to put it as lean blue for now. So, yeah, that's my prediction so far for 2026 governor's races for as of June 2025. As you can see, I don't believe I have any flips currently. However, there are real opportunities for flips in Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Georgia. So thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like, subscribe, share, turn on post notifications so you don't miss a future upload. And please comment to help me grow my channel and the algorithm. And thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.